So let's talk about this James Harden situation. I mean, first things first, I want to say I'm siding with Harden. When it comes to being a franchise and being a player, I do believe that Philly has made James Harden into a villain, but James Harden is not the villain in this situation. James Harden went to Philly in 2021, right? 2021, yeah. It was the 21-22 season. And I'm pretty sure he arrived there like right as in free agency when it was turning to 2022 or when it was already 2022. He went to Philly and he got there through a trade which he had requested. James Harden has this personality of being ego, just I'm still a superstar. That the fact that he's people think he's kind of a bastard or kind of just a maniac in terms of just not being loyal. But James Harden, if we really look at it, really he's just a player who wants to maximize his potential. I'm not saying that that's for the good or for the bad, or that I support it or that I don't. But you notice that every single one of James Harden's moves has been to better himself or put himself in a position where he can find something that is good, right? And you have to respect that. He puts himself first, even if that has caused him to go down a very rocky road. The reason why I say this is because recently we got the most recent one of his situations, which was that now he's getting fined $100,000 by the NBA because he's been talking about Daryl Morey, and his whole team, right? Because of a contract. If you guys don't know, James Harden in 2021 went to the Philadelphia 76ers. And when he went to the team, right, he had basically said, like, yo, I'm going to be here. I'm going to be in the organization, but I need a contract. So what the Sixers did was that they were like, okay, we're going to offer you a 2-year deal, right? A 1+1. 1 year is a guaranteed year, like you're going to play for Philadelphia that year. And the next year, right, you get a player option. So you get to decide if you pick up that player option or not. And the whole point was that when this deal would end, right, he would decline his player option and then they would sign him to a long-term contract. Or he would accept the player option and they would extend him. Because if we're being serious, when James Harden went to Philly, he was a max contract player. And I mean that completely seriously. Like when James Harden arrived to Philly, you guys have to remember that that's when people still had a good image about him in his head. This is not now. Now people know in the modern day that Harden, even though he's still a phenomenal player, right? Like Harden is a star, an All-NBA caliber player. He led the league in assists because a lot of people like to act like he's a scrub. He isn't. But he's not the level of player which he used to be, right? Like in Houston, he revolutionized the game, him and Stephen Curry and Mike D'Antoni, because those three guys basically started the three-point revolution, the shoot a lot of threes, and the way that James Harden was playing made people want to do this ISO-heavy, step-back, three, and it made them want to expand their shooters and make the game more fluid by adding more shooters. And that was really because of James Harden and how good he was in Houston. Then when he went to Brooklyn, he was still that player. But he used to pass more because he had better teammates now. So he didn't have to go and drop 36 a game, breaking himself, doing 30 dribbles per possession. No, he could just simply go and assist Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving and he would be good. But after a year, Harden realized, like, oh, I don't want to be here. Because Kyrie was getting the pandemic, the COVID shot, he wasn't getting it. James Harden had already lost in the playoffs, and he realized like, oh, this is kind of like falling apart. So preemptively, before it actually did fall apart, he just left. He was like, I don't want to be here. This is a mess. Kyrie doesn't want to play. Kevin Durant, it kind of looks disinterested in basketball, and this whole front office and this team is built like trash. So I'm just gonna leave before this stuff gets out of hand. When he left, people were still had some hope that he was a max contract player, because since now that he would get to play next to Joel Embiid, right, it would cause him to be able to fully maximize himself, right? Because now you have a big man who could do everything. So as long as you can feed him, you could do as much as you want, and you two are going to win, right? Like a Kobe and Shaq-esque. That's what they were comparing them to. Until they put them on the court together. When they put them on the court together, and it's been 2 years now, they gave him a contract, as I said, a 1+1. And then, Harden started playing like he transitioned his game to be, which is more of a passer, more passive. He makes plays for people. He averages 10 assists. And you could tell that he's changed his play style into being a superstar, into being like a star, a secondary star. Now he went from being like the Jason Tatum to being the Jaylen Brown, right? And there's no problem with that, right? You do as much as you can, because the Harden's aging. He's not the same player that he used to be, and it just comes with the NBA that players are going to get worse, right? We don't, just because James Harden is a superstar doesn't mean that he needs to have 10 years of longevity being consistently great. Like, not everyone's LeBron or Steph, and I'm sorry to say that, and that's just a fact. But people realize this, and quickly the Sixers realize, oh, this is not working, right? James Harden is not the player who we thought he was going to be. Joel Embiid can't win in the playoffs, right? He needs someone who's clutcher and who can make up for his deficiencies. And James Harden has now led us to 2 defeats in 2 different playoffs, right? Absolutely stinking it up in 2023, this past season versus Boston in that Game 7, where it didn't even look like he could play basketball. After having 2 phenomenal games where he hit 2 different game winners in the same series. And then, right, in Miami in 2022, when they were supposed to beat Miami, or at least they were supposed to make it competitive, but Miami really, even though it went to 6 games, if you actually watch the series, it didn't seem like Miami was ever struggling against Philly. It just seemed like there was, 2 games where James Harden just decided to be good, and they ended up winning. But so as we look back, right now, the whole premise of this was that Daryl Morey promised something to James Harden. I don't know if it was money. I don't know if it was a long-term contract. I don't know if it was a trade, right? And he promised something to James Harden if he would take the shorter deal. Because what James Harden did is he took the 1+1, which paid him around $35 million. But James Harden, when he went to Philly, he was worth around $40 to $45 million, if we're being honest. So he took a pay cut of like $10 million so they could sign PJ Tucker, Daniel House, and work with their roster better, and so they wouldn't be in cap hell. And then, after he took this pay cut, the whole point was that either they were going to sign and trade him, if I'm not mistaken, or that they were going to give him a long-term contract after that one so that he could play in Philly for long periods of time after they had reshaped the roster. They didn't do this. What they did was that they decided, you know what, James, you keep choking the playoffs. We're just not going to do what we promised you. And this mostly falls under Daryl Morey and him and James Harden's relationship. Because really, the reason why James Harden went to Philly, apart from that it's a good city, you know what I'm saying, a good city, the fact that there's a superstar there, and the fact that it's it was to get him out of Brooklyn, Daryl Morey is the vice president of the team. And that has caused him to have a direct connection with everything that happens up in that office. It's caused him to be able to secure probably more money or more opportunities or a bigger role than he would have had. Like, I'm sorry, but if I would have been the VP of the Sixers, I would have already told them like, yo, prioritize Tyrese Maxey and make James Harden just pass the ball, but prioritize Tyrese really getting the ball a lot. But this caused him to now be infuriated. He didn't get his part. He can't say because if he does, then it would cause a big problem around the league with tampering and under the table deals. But I'm with James Harden on this one. I do think that if the Philly promised him something, they should have gave it to him, and I do think that he should fight for his rights.